Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We are at the end of the summer now and getting ready for the fall. It's Croptober is coming around the corner, so we'll be happy out in the fields. But we have a hemp news wrap up on state initiatives around the country. We have a great interview this evening with Bret Bogue, a longtime activist. He'll be talking about his history with cannabis resin or hash production. And that's about it. So stay tuned for another great edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We'll bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
All right, tonight we're going to do a petition initiative roundup about upcoming votes around the country. We'll go through this in alphabetical order. In Arkansas, they're working on full legalization. Activists are working to qualify a ballot measure to legalize and regulate adult use marijuana in Arkansas. The proposal would allow adults to legally purchase and grow up to 12 marijuana plants at home. Proponents have to gather 89,151 valid signatures by July 2022. There's a couple in play in Idaho. One is depenalization. Idaho activists received the green light from the Secretary of State's office to begin collecting signatures for proposed depenalization ballot initiative. If qualified, the measure would allow adult possession of up to 3 ounces of marijuana on private property. The measure would not establish a regulated retail marketplace. There's another medical marijuana initiative in Idaho. Another group of activists is cleared to begin collecting signatures to qualify a separate medical marijuana measure for the 2022 ballot. The proposal would allow qualifying patients to access up to 4 ounces of medical marijuana with a physician's recommendation, as well as permit the home cultivation of up to 6 plants for therapeutic use. Activists have until May 2022 to collect nearly 65,000 valid Idaho signatures to qualify each of those initiatives. In Missouri, they're working on a legalization initiative similar to the campaign to legalize medical marijuana in Missouri in 2018. Missouri residents could see several competing marijuana legalization measures on the state's 2022 ballot. Fair Access Missouri, one of the groups working to qualify marijuana reform ballot measures, has submitted several initiatives, at least one of which would legalize adult use of marijuana in the state. New Approach Missouri, the proponents behind the successful medical marijuana initiative in 2018, also plan to qualify an adult use legalization measure for the 2022 ballot. A new adult use legalization ballot measure has been submitted by a third group of proponents, Legal Missouri 2022. 171,592 signatures are needed to qualify each of these initiatives by May of 2022. In Nebraska, there's a medical marijuana petition. After a 2020 medical marijuana measure was stripped from the ballot, advocates with Nebraskans for medical marijuana are once again working to legalize medical marijuana access in Nebraska. In order to avoid violating the single subject rule that derailed the 2020 effort, activists now plan to place 2 separate complementary initiatives on the ballot for 2022. Nebraska lawmakers considered legalization of medical access in 2021, but the bill was ultimately defeated. I actually went in 2017 and testified before the Nebraska Judiciary Committee in favor of legalization. Didn't go anywhere then either, obviously. But the Nebraska campaign team has officially submitted language for 2 measures to the Secretary of State's office and expect approval by the end of this month. Each measure advocates will need to collect 126,838 signatures in Nebraska by July 2022. In North Dakota, they're working on legalization. A group of activists are collecting signatures for a legalization initiative that would allow adults to legally possess and purchase marijuana from retail outlets, as well as grow a limited number of marijuana plants at home for personal use. And they need 27,000 signatures by January of 2022 to qualify. In Ohio, they're working on legalization. Proponents behind the effort, the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, have submitted an initial slew of signatures in hopes of qualifying a statewide ballot measure that would push lawmakers to enact adult use marijuana legalization in Ohio. Once advocates collect 132,887 Ohio registered voter signatures by December 2021, lawmakers will have 4 months to enact the reform. If lawmakers fail to act, then an additional 132,887 signatures will be required by July 2022 to put the measure on the ballot before voters during the November 2022 election. It would allow adults to purchase and possess up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana and grow 6 plants at home in the state of Hawaii. There's also a legalization measure petition in Oklahoma. A group of activists in the state are working to qualify a ballot measure to legalize and regulate adult marijuana use and allow adults to grow up to 12 plants for personal use. And last but not least, there's also an initiative in South Dakota and in Wyoming. And so we'll talk more about those in the coming weeks. Hopefully they'll qualify. We want to wish all those people a lot of luck. I have a lot of experience in gathering signatures starting back in 1982 all the way up until 2014. But next we have our interview with Bret Bogue, and we'll be talking about hash making. If you or a loved one are looking for help finding a doctor who can recommend medical marijuana anywhere in the United States, you can call our office at 503-235-4606. Our office number is 503-235-4606. Thanks for watching and help us restore him. Good night. I would like to introduce Bret Bogue to our audience there. Bret and I have known each other for a long time, but we haven't known each other really well. I remember we were at the KushCon 2 on a speakers panel there, and we were just judges last fall at the Jalisco Cup for judging the cannabis in Mexico, which was a lot of fun. But I'm glad to finally have you on the show, Bret.
Well, thank you, Paul. You know, as you alluded to, we definitely have been in the same circles for over 20 plus years. It's sometimes we get so caught up in everything that goes on, we actually just pass over each other. And I think in that some ways, with all due respect, I think that's really what happened with a lot of, because we have, I mean, literally when we were talking earlier today before the show, I mean, we have some deep connections, like the mother and father in the industry. So it is a pleasure really to get you to know you better. And at the Jalisco Cup, it was a pleasure to have and be around you and your wife, and as well all of the other friends that you had brought there. I don't know if you know or not, I have developed a wonderful relationship with Gabrielle. And just what a fascinating woman. So again, sometimes when you are kind of almost locked into a certain group, it's very refreshing to open up. And again, I thank you for the introduction to that said group. It's been just a breath of fresh air in Mexico.
Yeah, that's a great set of activists there in Guadalajara. It's true. But you've been an activist for a long, long time. I know just beforehand you were telling me about your connections and support for the Seattle Hemp Fest. But a lot of times I like to ask people to start way back at the very beginning. When did you first start using cannabis? If you don't mind me asking.
Wow. Well, I can actually specifically remember the day and time. I was 12 years old. I was with a girlfriend, and we were both in 6th grade. We lived in Gig Harbor, Washington. I went over to go visit her at her house, and she had an older sister that was 2 grades older. She was in 8th grade. And right next door to her house was their cousin's house, which happened to be just right in that. We were all kind of between, let's call it 6th grade up to about 9th grade or so. So we were 15 or 20. Yeah, middle school to just basically high school. And long or short, I'll never forget it. first really serious girlfriend. I'm over at the house. Everyone's all, and I'm feeling like, what do I do? Where am I at? Type of thing. And the next thing you know, the older sister, she's like, hey, let's go over to the cousin's house. So we go over there. Literally, it was next door. We're over there, and all of a sudden, the older guys and girls are like, hey, let's smoke some marijuana. Let's smoke. And the next thing you know, I had my first experience. And I have to say, up to that point, I was a very active young kid, probably more so, if you will, ADD, HDHD, that type of kind of a situation. And my parents had got me on Ritalin. And the Ritalin was really making me feel like I didn't want to be involved in anything. And once I hit that cannabis, I have to say, it literally, it enlightened. I can't even really describe, because I don't think a lot of us, I'm a parent, you're a parent, I don't think I want to walk around and go, hey, let's give everyone cannabis at 12 years old. That's not, I'm not advocating that. I'm not saying that. And if anyone says that, then they didn't hear what I said.
Yeah.
Every situation is just that, an individual situation. I had found what I know today. I found the missing kind of link to who I was on this earth. And we all know that anyone that's truly a cannabis, not only survivor, but user on a daily or for medical or sacramental uses, I think we see that and we realize. So for me, it's kind of crazy what I did. After smoking everything, I went back to my house to my mom. My mom was my greatest she's always been my greatest ally. And I just go, Mom, I don't want to lie. I smoked cannabis today, and it was the best thing I've ever done, ever. And she looked at me like, what do you mean? And I broke down what I just did to you as far as, hey, look you give me the Ritalin. This is how it's making me feel. And this is how this makes me feel. After that, my mom had taken me off Ritalin, and she literally, I don't recommend this to everyone. I'm not saying this to everyone. I was a very advanced 12-year-old person. But my mom was like, if that works for you and you can stay out of trouble, get it. And I did. And she helped me get it. She helped me do it. And then that's when I really started seeing the benefits. And that's when I started using it.
Was that in the 70s?
No, I'm 51 years old. So that was in the 80s.
80s. Okay.
Most of the cannabis that we were getting when I was a young kid came from the University of Washington. In 1974, the University of Washington had a medical program. Some of the strains that we may hear from over the years, one they call the University UW, and I'm sure you being up in the Pacific Northwest, you've heard of that. But well, there was another strain, and that strain was a bot, and that strain was specifically from Laos. It was probably the best, most powerful strain at the University of Washington. During that time of that program, of course, I was only 4 years old when that program erected, but I have friends that are in their late 60s that as I got older in high school, were running the kind of business, if you will, around the area. They happened to have that strain, and that was called the goo. We called it the goo. They never gave it a name. They never said anything about it. And that strain is the one that they call the goo that ended up at the Oaksterdam, and that ended up on the thing was said the Afgooey. That's the goo. So that strain is really a strain that came from Vietnam, and it was extremely, extremely powerful. So a lot of those we worked with, of course, you're familiar with the Northwest, so you would remember a strain called the Peds. We started working with that strain in 1985. So a lot of times when I see a lot of different people say a lot of different things, I'm like, well, what do you mean? We use that strain specifically for outdoor growing. It was very good for cold and mold resistant. It generally finished at the end of September. So within the Pacific Northwest, not nowadays, the weather has changed. But if you were to grow outside, it was perfect for that weather condition. It made it through all the uckiness, and it finished before the uckiness came in, when the rains, the colds, where your buds wouldn't form up properly and they would mold because of the rains. So
yeah, familiar with that, unfortunately.
I know you are. I know you are. That's why I'm saying it, because you're
Right.
in that area. You're in the Oregon area.
A cannabis grower in this area, you have to learn how to deal with that, especially if you're in one of the wetter areas. But so then you became a grower and an activist. How did that develop? How did you come to
So,
be an activist and start going to the High Times Cups and becoming a hashitian
over,
in terms of following the path for hash and the
yeah,
Paul?
well, for sure. So what really would happen was, just like anyone, you get excited, you start seeing the benefits of the actual cannabis and what it can do. How I really, really got turned into it. I, like everyone, well, not everyone, a lot of people, I had a substance abuse problem. Alcohol is my drug of choice. And from about 16 to about 24 years old, on a daily, I would drink anywhere from a case to 2 cases a day. Couldn't keep a job, couldn't keep life. I was homeless for about 2 or 3 years. I lived on the streets of Tacoma and sold my blood so I could get money, my plasma, so I could get more alcohol and drugs. Um, it was around that time that I started getting very sick, and I was getting sick almost every week. Little did I know that, unfortunately, not only was I killing myself because of my alcoholism, but also while I was giving my red blood cells, or to my plasma, I was actually depleting myself of what I needed to be able to fight off things. And I
Yeah.
started getting so sick that eventually I went to the doctors. The doctors could not really say anything other than alcohol seemed to be the problem. So I eventually got myself straight. After I got myself straight off alcohol, I got my first serious job, which happened to be with the largest demolition company in the world. We do all the implosions of all the buildings worldwide. We implode them, we take them out. We're the largest disaster relief company in the world. When 9/11 happened, we were the ones that went and took the bodies out. When the Pentagon, we took the bodies out. That's what we do. So that job, that company was called Nupricon. It ended up becoming LVI. And if you see up in the Pacific Northwest, and you'll see many of you will have well up in Oregon, they're called Renew. And Renew is Nupricon, which is LVI. It sold for $450 million. I was part of a company that started out of a garage. We started that out of a garage, and it rose to the largest demolition company in the world out of the garage. So I like to be part of things that are bigger than life. And I'm just lucky enough to have that opportunity to do that. It was during that time that they provided the best medical that I've ever had in my life. After being sober and everything, I still was getting sick. What the hell? I changed my life. I'm in the move. Everything's great. Everything's perfect. No, it wasn't. Unfortunately, I went and I had what was a cyst up here on the top of my head. I played a lot of sports in high school, baseball, wear a lot of caps, those type of things. I went to the doctor. I went there, said, hey, I have this bump on the top of my head. I could actually move it. I could go, rat, rat, rat. It was crazy, okay?
Uh-huh.
Got it removed when I was 12 or 13 years old. When I was a young boy, the doctor said, no big deal. Don't worry about it. Have a nice day. Cool. We're now at 24 years old, 25, and I have the medical, as I said. I go get checked out. Same thing. Hey, it looks like this sebaceous cyst. No big deal. Slip, slap, we're out. Okay, cool. Well, that wasn't that way. What ended up happening was 24 hours later, the doctor called to say, immediately come in. You have one of the rarest forms ever on earth. You are the youngest ever, the only one alive. The average age is 75. You are only 25. Everything we do will be experimental. You are a walking, talking, scientific experiment, young man. What? They said, yep, come on in now. We got to go back to surgery now. So the next day, after they got everything, they're like, come in now. I was so scared. I was only 25 years old. So I come in, they give me all the news, they tell me everything, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait a minute. So there's no one alive. Everyone's dead, right? Yes, Brett. There's only 32 known cases in the world at the time, because of course things change. But at the time, there's only 32, and the average age was 75. I had already been using cannabis and smoking cannabis regularly, as I already told your audience. And so I started doing some research. That research led me to, of course, our friend that has passed away many moons ago. And of course, that was Jack Hare. And I got the book, Emperor Wears No Clothing. I found it online. And that, of course, was in 1990, 95, 96. Okay. So I started reading this book, and I look at the book and I'm like, wait a minute. He keeps referencing certain articles about oils, right? So then I go to the Torah, the Quran, I go to the Christian Bible, I go to every Bible that I could think of that you call a Bible. And everything I do is find the recipe to make the holy anointing oil. What? I'm like, all these cats, these religious people, they're using cannabis, yo. And they're not telling us the truth. They're lying to us. The people that are supposed to be the truth and everything else that show up on Sundays are the liars. Oh! Then I started going, I'm not going to church anymore because I'm tired of dealing with liars. I only want people that tell the truth. If you have to stand up and fake about what you're saying is the goodness, you're actually lying while you're talking about the goodness, and you're not even willing to tell the truth. So why would I want to listen to what you have to say? You're already lying to me to begin with. Facts. Facts. You have to challenge what they're saying, because if you're not, you're just the sheep that's willing to listen to more of their poo-poo, and I don't do that. So while I started doing that, I started researching. I'm like, wait a minute. I could take this cannabis, I can use alcohol, and I can make the holy anointing oil. So I've been making the holy anointing oil since 1995, 96. I'm listening to all these people. What the hell are these people talking about? The fuck did they invent? They didn't invent nothing. And we, the people, need to demand the facts of what it is. Stop putting someone up on a pedestal when they don't belong there. Because they didn't do anything. They didn't make anything. So stop it. That's the biggest thing that I'm so sick and tired of our industry. Stop putting these people up in front of something that didn't do anything. If you want to know history, go research, travel the world. And so as I started seeing that, I got involved to say, wait a minute, there's too many things that people are talking about that aren't true. There's too many things of people saying that they did that they didn't do. And they shouldn't get credit for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be the people and the Bibles, and if God or whoever it was, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it goes back to prehistoric times. That's what I've found in my studies is cannabis use is at the basis of all these different spiritual practices, from ancestor worship in China, Shinto in Japan, the Israel, Judaism and Christianity, the Hindu religions, all sorts of religions from the past. Cannabis has been a sacrament for so long. And it wasn't about 800 years ago that I think it was Pope Leo X who said, take cannabis out of Christianity, and it's only for us, not for everybody else, And
it's amazing how, and not to go down a rabbit hole, but it's just, as we look at it, and that's what really propelled me to want to be the, as you just said, Bret, how did you become an activist? Well, I then started saying, wait a minute. If these are some of the facts that are getting put out, and these are some of the things that are happening, where did we go wrong? What is it? And so for me, then, that's what charged me up. It made me say, hey, you know what? This saved me, not only mentally, physically, and I believe spiritually. It reconnected me with what I was missing. And of course, we know that cannabis, hemp, has been illegal in North America and the UN for 84 years. Today, this year's 84 years that it's been illegal. And when I started doing research and I started going around, we're talking about, and it really goes to the plant itself, the evolution of mankind. And the evolution of mankind actually what is not only mankind, it's also the evolution of hemp and cannabis. So as mankind itself has evolved, and let's just say for the sake of argument or whatever, but it does appear based off what we can scientifically prove is that, Mom, 1 second, I'm on a call. Okay, all right, okay. And that was my mom, you guys. Hi, Barbara. And so where we're going is that because of it being illegal, and when we start to think about what it has meant for the rest of the world, we're talking about an industry that for cannabis, for economics, for religious and social purposes, cannabis has been going on, and so is hemp, for 20, 30,000 years in civilizations that people have used, and is almost in every part. So if we watch through the evolvement of mankind, you can watch us tracing us, because again, where I was going with this is we can all, our bloodlines, every last, you, Paul, me, everyone in this world, there's 4 women. That's a fact. Your bloodlines go to 4 women. It's not Jesus. It's not Jehovah's. It's not Messiah. It's not, sorry, people. Sorry. It's 4 people. And if you don't like it, I don't know what to tell you, but I go on facts. You got to prove it to me. And I just proved it to you. So there's 4 women are, I guess that's the Virgin Mary for all those Christian people. You have a black mama. Just know that. It's fact. If you don't like it, I don't know what to tell you, but go run your DNA and then tell me how you got black mama in you. It's the truth. It's the truth.
Generally accepted recent studies of DNA show that the Homo sapiens, which make up about 97% of our current DNA, 3% being primarily Neanderthal, outside of Africa. In Africa, it's all just Homo sapien. But there were other groups of humans out there when the Homo sapiens left Africa about 35 or 45,000 years ago. That's the current scientific theory that DNA shows. And so there was another group in Asia, the Denisovans. They were kind of in the area where hemp was indigenous in Central Asia. So they might have encountered hemp earlier, but definitely Homo sapiens did when they left Africa.
Well, I would say Ethan Russo, which we all are quite familiar with him, he states that cannabis has a livelihood on on Earth of over 200 million years. So that surpasses any life of a human being that could be. Thus, that I hope then ties directly, and not to go down the rabbit hole too far with this subject, is that ties in the human migration, where then if we actually started from why I brought the 4 women up, if we started as human race in Africa, which it appears we did, and then we started migrating, and if we will, through the evolution of our mankind and the earth, as we went through all these different changes, like a puzzle, if you put it together, you could see that it probably was connected at one point. Much easier for individuals to migrate through, to go from one side to the other. To end, and where I might go with this is my activism has led me, and it might be a perfect segue to lead into, the truth and the understanding of not only roughly 11 landrace strains that make up the whole foundation of all cannabis worldwide, as well as the techniques for dry sieve and cold water extractions, which have been used for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, where cannabis smoking wasn't necessarily even what it appears that they were doing. It was more of the extraction of essential herbs for the components of the trichromes, the crystals, if you will, in a multitude of levels, not only through an oil, but also, if you will, through another form of what would be steam. And steam has been used, of course, for extractions of cannabis and hemp and all other botanical herbs for thousands of years. It's one of the oldest practices of gathering the essential terpenes from the plant. And of course, if you will, and then maybe it kind of encapsulate this is that at one point, and I think we had talked about this offline, and maybe this might be again where we could bring it up, is about the actual cold water extraction patent. The cold water extraction patent expired in 2017. It still has 5 more years to capture all of the other individuals. For those that don't know, you can actually pull it up. It's a U.S. patent. It's also a European patent, Canadian patent. The holder of the patent, his name is Reinhard Delp, D-E-L-P. He owns it for the apparatus and methodology. Paul, I think you understand what I just told you. That means he owns all hash.
Right.
He owns all hash.
Okay.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Is he still alive?
He died in the year 2017 of a heart attack. Why? Who was he fighting, you would ask? He was fighting the likes of Ben Jongers. He was fighting Bubble Man, Fresh Headies. He was fighting Nicotine. He was fighting Frenchie Cannoli. He was fighting GW Pharmaceutical. Why, you ask? Well, it's unfortunate, but in the year 1996, Reinhard Delp showed up to the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam. That was the 10th annual Cannabis Cup.
Okay.
During that time, he bought a place for him to come up and come to the front of the stage. Okay? So he got up on front of the stage in front of all these different people. Now, mind you, prior to 1996, hash had hair, dog, pee, whatever. It was fucked up. It had everything wrong in it. Okay?
Yeah.
That's a fact. The fact. So here we go. So Reinhard Delp shows up to the Cannabis Cup. Now, mind you, Reinhard Delp had lived with the King of Nepal from 1965 to the year 1972. He lived with the King of Nepal. While he lived there,
hash was legal. Hash was legal
hash
in
was
Nepal.
legal then.
There was a very famous Kathmandu hash store that I have posters of. I bet you have posters of too from the Kathmandu. It was legal until 75.
It was actually 74, and then after 74, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information that is taught at the University of Nepal. Everything I'm telling you is factual and taught. Okay, so here we go. So what ends up happening, Reinhardt goes in there. Now he's German. And just as you just said, the Kathmandu Trail was the greatest trail for all the hippies. Didn't matter where you were from. You wanted to understand what that third eye could not give you, living in the States or any other place, because they were hiding all the truth and the wisdom for the people. And they had done it for many, many years. Who is that? It's called the CIA. And for all those that don't understand that while you sit around and you think you're watching what you think you don't know anything. And that's a fact. Yeah. Because there's an underlining of
the CIA has been using hash and drugs to fund their black operations forever.
And so what did they do? And here's what they did. In 1972, they show up. That's the CIA. They show up to the King of Nepal. They show up there. Now, again, to all the viewers and understand this, that up to the point that Paul talked about, my friends were one of the largest hashish dealers in the world, selling hundreds of thousands of kilos a year, legally out of the front door of the king's palace in Nepal. So I don't know how much, I don't know what was going on, but people were coming from all over the world to buy hash, and they were shipping it everywhere, all over the world. Legal. Let's understand this, you guys. Legal. So all of a sudden, Reinhardt says one day, he says out of the blue, in comes these guys, and he looks over and he's like, "What the hell?" And it's white dudes, of course, and they're all in suits. That doesn't happen. No, white dudes don't show up in suits, not to the King of Nepal, not in 1972, they don't. So all of a sudden they do their talk, whatever, then they leave. And who was it? Of course, it was the CIA. What did they want? King of Nepal, we see a problem with your country and the rest of this other place over here. You guys are just, it's legal. You're just selling this shit like it's legal. We have a proposition for you. We will give you 40 million US dollars, 40 million US dollars if you make hashish illegal. Wait, what? No, what, man, are you guys, you don't get it. We pray to the God of Shiva here. We don't have Jesus, Allah, Buddha, nothing. We pray to the cannabis God, yo. We've been praying to the cannabis God before you even knew God. What? Wait a minute. What are you saying to me? Well, we didn't have Jesus then. You guys made him up later.
Well, actually, there's some speculation that Jesus went to Nepal and then came back. You know, there's certain years, I think from the age of 13 to 30, Jesus just kind of disappears off the map.
Isn't it crazy? It's crazy, people.
There's a lot of speculation that he went to Nepal. Then there's some proof to that in terms of spreading that philosophy.
It's so crazy. So then he says, what? And he goes, well, so they want me to make the hashish illegal. Are you going to do that? Well, I don't know. Well, guess what? In 1974, he deemed that hashish and cannabis was completely illegal in his country. Completely illegal. And that year, you should go check. The Napoleon team was caught with $40 million worth of heroin trying to smuggle it in the U.S. What? So Reinhardt becomes a very powerful part in this whole thing. So he leaves after getting all that experience, goes and says, hey, I want to be able to take this information that I have through the Saddam Hussein recipe, because there's a recipe. It's known. It's a fact. But I need to clean this up. So Reinhardt moves. This is such a beautiful. Reinhardt moves to a place called Spy Rock, Mendocino County. He moves there in 79. In 1979, he sells to, I believe it was the Flying Dutchman, and to someone else, the first feminized seeds in the world. The first feminized seed. He then goes on to create Cali Orange Bud and Blackberry. Two of the most important Cali strains that I've known in a long time. Never gets credit for anything because he's not trying to come out to, that's not who he is.
Get arrested until the past couple of years. That'll land you in prison for life.
Exactly. So then what he does is, as he starts to see the legalization happen, and as I said, he went to the Cannabis Cup in 1996. Now, this will where it gets very interesting. As he goes up to the stage, he puts out what is called the TR-2000. That's his apparatus that he makes. He gets on the stage. He goes, hey, today I'm going to, at the free will, I'm going to teach the world how to make unadulterated hash for your medical enjoyment. If you so choose to use what I'm doing here, this is a patented methodology and apparatus. If you are to go and make and sell hash, you should come to me first and do a licensing with me, and I'll be happy to talk to you if you meet my qualifications. Done. He goes, done. Here you are. First ever unadulterated hash in the world. The first time the world had ever seen it. 1996, Cannabis Cup, Reinhardt Dell. Never before had the world seen it. Ever.
Tell me about this Cannabis Cup in '96. So he demonstrated this new ice technique.
It's actually a cold water. They call it the Ice Wars, but really, as I sat with him, because I got to spend a lot of time with Reinhardt, because I had to bring to light, and I'll go into that in a second here, of what really it was. Really what it came down to, ultimately, it all comes down, you're going to love it. I can't give it away because we're actually going to repatent this, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. I'm getting it in Jamaica, Canada. I'm getting it in the U.S. I'm getting it all over because I've got to. Reinhardt came to me in a dream. So Reinhardt, how I got turned into all this. I was in the Cannabis at 2005. I was walking around. There was a guy yelling that, Ben Jonker's a thief from Sensi Seed. Bubble Man's a thief. These guys are all thieves. They're all steal people. And Mila's a thief. And I'm like, you're calling all the people that are the greatest people of all time thieves. Why are you doing that? Why are you saying that? Well, because they all stole from this guy. What do you mean? So what I did is at 2005, I literally left because I happened to live in Mendocino County. And I was like, wait a minute, that guy lives in Mendocino County? I'm going there. So I literally got lost the first time. I got an M16 pointed at me and backed out of someone's driveway on Spy Rock the first time I met Reinhardt Dell. They were going to kill me because it was during the middle of the season and I drove onto their property. That's how I got to meet Reinhardt Dell. Not him and his people, but I went on the wrong property. I was up on Spy Rock. I was like, oh, please, don't kill me. He's like, get out of here. And he's put the gun right to my head.
Wow.
And he backed me out of his driveway. He goes, if I see you again, I will kill you. I was like, no problem. You'll never see me again. So it was interesting. That's the real world and what we do, I mean, that's a fact. It's if you either stand up or stand out, get it. So when I went there to go see him, he pulls out all of this, all the history, everything, the patents, everything he did. And where it goes to is that day on the stage, as I explained to you before, out in this audience was a new company called GW Pharmaceutical with Dr. Guy. That's the G in GW Pharmaceutical. Also, another gentleman named David Watson, the creator of Skunk #1, the winner of the very first Cannabis Cup for Positronics in 1985. Also, another person that seems to be famous, I'm still I question, and his name's Robert Connolly Clark. And I'll go into to explain to you a little bit about this whole thing. Also in the audience was a lady named Mila Jensen. The world knows her as the hash queen, but you'll understand that's not true. And also a young photographer that worked for Mark Emery. That gentleman's name was Mark, later to be known as Bubble Man. So Reinhardt presents his whole thing, cool, tells everyone rock and roll, comes off the stage. The first person to come to him is Dr. Guy. You'll never work a day in your life. You're $100 million man. You don't understand. You just changed the world. Reinhardt says to him, hey, I don't think you heard me. I'm not really into this big, huge thing. It's more about family and love. I don't think you fit what I'm trying to do. Thank you, though. Watson.
You didn't do that. I did that. I'm the one.
You did? Where's your patent? You didn't do shit, dude. Actually, if you go check, you got busted in 1984 by Santa Cruz police and the sheriffs, and then they churned your story over to the DEA. And after they churned your story over to the DEA, they took all your information of the seeds and everything that you sold worldwide and then went and busted a whole bunch of people. But somehow, in 1984, while you're going through all this, and the DEA take your thing, now we all know, if we're in the cannabis industry, how the real world works. And especially in 1984, when you have the largest bust in the history of Santa Cruz, and they don't even know what you're doing, so they turn it over to the DEA. How do you end up in Amsterdam the next year?
But they wanted him to be there. Right.
The DEA won the first Cannabis Cup in the Amsterdam. And you can check that because I like to check facts, everything. Why don't you check a gentleman that owned the very first cannabis club in the Netherlands? It's called the Mellow Yellow. It was opened up in 1979 by Warner. I always mess his last name up, Bruner. Why don't you ask him about how or what? Well, Mr. David Watson was staying at his house. How in the middle of the days and nights, he would be on the phone for more hours than anyone had ever seen, calling all over the world. What are you doing on the phone, bro? Anyone that I have relatives all over Europe. I remember spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month to talk to him on a phone. Who are you talking to, my friend? Now, again, this is all speculation, no necessarily proof. So I don't want to throw out the rock and roll. But something doesn't seem right. Now, I will say that, and I'll stand by that. Second and last then was Robert Connolly Clark. Robert Connolly Clark was just writing a botany of hashish. And he's like, oh my God, if you put that out, my book would be useless. Well, because it is useless. You're not telling the truth. And so our industry, again, has taken these demigods and we've let their lies, their deceptions cheat our industry. And then to go to the next level. So now we'll go to the next level. So now there's a lady, her name is Mila Jensen. She comes up, she's like, oh my God, I need that. So Reinhardt said, hey, well, let's go talk. Now, mind you, Reinhardt is German. She is Dutch. Almost like 1 and 1, if you know what I mean. So the next thing you know, they start talking and they start making a deal. I have the signed piece of paper from Mila Jensen, dated 1996, that she, in fact, would represent the patent and she would pay us 10%. Guess what? Never paid a dime. Went on and got hired by the Dutch government because the next year a new product was made called Nader hash. What is Nader hash? It's cold water extraction hash, but they call it Nader hash. And of course, because it's regulated and controlled and taxed in the Netherlands, you have to know how to tax it and make it. So what do? The Dutch government hire the inventor of cold water extraction, Mila. What? And they pay her. For what? So now they're paying her. Now, you ask. And then, of course, there's a young photographer. His name's Mark Bubbleman. And of course, he goes back and gets the money funded from Mark Emery to start bubble bags, which we're never supposed to be. Okay? Now, let's go to the clincher, how I figured all this out and I found it. I told you in 2005, I went to the Cannabis. I came back. I needed all the proof to understand. So I went to Reinhardt's house up on Spy Rock. He owns 400 acres up on Spy Rock. I go up there. He tells me the story and I'm looking at him. I don't believe him. I don't believe him at all. I don't. I'm telling you right now. I don't believe this guy. So I go, you got to prove this to me. So he brings out all the documents, everything that I'm talking about, he brings them out. And then he says, I think GW Pharmaceutical is using my patent. Now, at that time, I did the largest stock deal in the cannabis industry. I did a $35 million deal. I was the first millionaire in this cannabis game. I'm the first one that showed everyone how to do stock deals. And if you did it right, you would have been rich too. But that's neither here nor there. I'm the one that put this game in. And I did it, and I showed people how to do it. I showed the Canadians how to do it. I showed everyone how to do this. So I'm sitting back, and I'm looking at everything, and I'm like, well, the deal I just did with Cannabis Science, I am on the back end. I'm the exec. I know everything that goes on with this company, and I know that if we do any research or anything, since we get it public, we have to make it public knowledge. You can't just go around with their money and just do whatever. So all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. You said, Reinhardt, that they are messing with your patent. So what did I do? I went to the back end of GW Pharmaceutical and I pulled it out, the smoking gun of all times. Dr. David Todd was doing his prerequisites from Kingland University in England. And he had gotten a job for GW Pharmaceutical. Everything was great. He needed to write his thesis, right, to be a doctor. You would not believe, Paul, what he wrote it on. Oh, that's right. Cold water extraction, friend.
I see.
He lied. He plagiarized himself all the way through. That man should never have a degree. He's a liar. While it goes on and he plagiarizes himself, all the information that I just told you. He goes on to talk about Mr. Watson.
as being just a founding father. He goes on to talk about Bubble Man as being a legend of something. He goes on to talk about Mila as being the one. But that's not true at all, because all you had to do was just go do a reference to go find the patent was held by this man the whole time. Also, at the same time, he goes on to talk about how Mila was hired by the Dutch government because she was the inventor of the cold water extraction. But she's not. And paid handsomely. And then in the meantime, after all that goes on, they state that inside that the 27 countries has recognized cold water extraction as the only pharmaceutical way to extract medicine worldwide. Have it written in writing by governments. At the same time, the DEA sponsored GW Pharmaceutical to a $20 million tune to do what? To track and to put into tracers that they could be able to say to keep the THC down. Oh, look at Denver, look at Florida, under 10%. Why? Because anything over 10, that would be easy for them to have a fields test to walk on, if I was the cop, to give you a possession of a controlled substance. This has been set up the whole time, and they're ready to kick your ass. Sorry, guys. You have been played like a donkey, and it's coming for you left and right. As I told you before, Paul, I am the rowdy, pouty piper of the industry. I can give you more information than anyone ever has given anyone, because the facts of what I've done is to tour this world to make sure you don't keep ripping us off. And to last is GW Pharmaceutical right now. They're on clinical trial 4, phase 4, to get listed here in the United States. Paul, you're quite familiar with clinical trials 1 through 4. And after that happens, what happens? It's one simple move. You go the Fetty. Fetty says time to change. Well, all has been looking at, hey, first we're going to be happy to get medical, which great, you got your medical. But the whole time while you got your medical, the whole industry forgot about the fact of what it is. Now it's recreational, and now they forgot about medical. And now they haven't forgot about medical, because what they're going to do is now they're going to tell everyone, because you got what you wanted, they're just going to switch it over. And when they switch it, they'll go from 1 to 2 to 3 and bye-bye everyone. You lost because you didn't pay attention, you didn't know the laws, and you weren't hip to the Geneva Act that started in 1969. That actually opened the door to everything we're talking about right now. It's like I told you, you need to know the international laws to work with the local laws. And if you don't, you're going to be bum rushed. And I figured that we have about 2 to 3 more years. Everything that you know today that you see, most of us we're out of this industry. We're gone. You're gone. If you don't have billions of dollars and you're not with the big boys, you're done. You are bought out. We'll have somewhat of a voice to talk when we get on social media as we are now, but we won't be part of anything. And we, the people, allowed this to happen. We allowed this to happen, Paul. So that's the story of the true kind of being of the patent. Now, the patent, to understand, when we took that information, by the way, we actually won some court cases. Let me end it with this. In 2009, public record, go up to Canada, Fresh Headies, Mountain Crystal, and another company were taken to court by Reinhardt Dell. And we won. We won $500,000 because they have been stealing and they have been lying to the public. Mark had to go. Thank God that he was good enough to come out. Mark's a good guy. I'm not trying to, no one's bad here other than you need to practice better business practices. That he had to come out publicly and say, hey, I took this from Reinhardt Dell. This is Reinhardt Dell's patent. I would have never been able to do this. He is the one. Now, last but not least is no one teaches you the proper techniques. So by the way, when most people, Paul, I know that you've made some water hash before. And in the water hash, when you're done and you pull the bags out, which is not the proper way to make water hash, by the way, but good enough for the example for the average person, I guess. When you're done and you pull it out, you ever wondered about all of that sheen that's inside the water that you throw away? Well, let me explain to you what's in that water that you throw away.
I know some people who save that and drink it. You know.
Okay, well, watch this. What's in it? It's
what?
The oil. It's the oil and the terpenes. So what happens? Let me explain to your listeners.
I'm going to give them a little class. This will be the greatest class because no one in the world will teach you the way we teach you. We teach
I have to kind of interrupt here because we're almost out of time. We have an hour-long television show, and so we're down to like a minute or so. So
there it is. It's
that,
basically at the end of the day. Then I'll wrap it up on my end. Is that what we do? Is we show you how to recapture the essential oil, the medical benefits of the hash, as well as the terpenes. Think about it as when you're making it. This is a chemical reaction. The water and the cold work as almost a bomb reaction. The shards of crystal break off. But at the same time, because it's so cold, it also separates from the chlorophyll matter, the oil, the essential oil, and the terpenes. If you ever look, the oil and terpenes float on the top, the water's in the middle, and on the bottom, of course, is the hash, the most heaviest of parts. You have to be able to now, within room temperature, bring back the two together. First, they exploded because of the cold. Now you need to bring them back. For less than $1, we could make the ancient secrets rise again.
well, that's a pretty good price. Now, if somebody is interested in contacting you and finding out more, do you have a website or any contact information you want to share with our audience?
Yes, we do. And you can always reach us at Apothecary, APOTHECARY, Genetics, GENETICS, or maybe a little something easier. We've just opened up our own captive insurance monetizing platform. And that website is MP, like military police, vest, VEST.com. That's the best way to get it.
All right. Well, thank you, Bret. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate that. We got to have you back on. We didn't even get into the Seattle Hip Fest and all the history there, but boy, it's been fascinating learning about the cold water extraction process and all the politics around that. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. When there's no listen. I think all of us can do is share and give. There's no enemy of the state or no bad people. Every one of the people that I've talked about have done in their own rights great works for our industry, and in no way, shape, or form am I taking away from the massive amount of influences that the people have done. I would only like to shed light on the individuals that have not been able to get their proper due.
All right. Well, thank you, Bret. We've had Bret Bogue on, and you can find him at Apothecary Seeds and MP Vests. In terms of
Genetics, Apothecary Genetics.
Okay, we'll put that up there. All right.
Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
Keep working to restore hemp. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you. Blessings.